the point I would like to make is, as a Celtic fan, you know, I'm so impressed with Brendan Rodgers over the last few weeks. He's poised, he's self-confident, he's self-assured, he's relaxed, he's always in control. I do think that as much as Philippe Clement has changed and transformed Rangers' fortunes, I've watched him, I've listened to him in the last few weeks, and I think he's allowing the emotion and the passion to get to him. I listened to some of his comments playing Dundee, he's happy to play Dundee and Mars. Yeah. Various other comments that he's made would suggest to me that he's not entirely in control. And as we enter, the business end of the season, I'm so delighted and pleased that at our helm is Brendan Rodgers.
How did you? Yeah, sorry, Andy.
So I was just going to say, you knew what you were buying into when Brendan Rodgers came back. He's an elite manager. He's been over the course before. I've got to say, I was a bit surprised that he came back to Scotland, but Celtic went out and got him. And I know that he divides opinion with some Celtic fans. They just don't like the way he left last time round. They're not having him this time round. But I think if he wins this title, you'll still get one or two that will have a few murmurs, I'm sure. But I think he has shown the experience, the leadership required to get through a vital stage of the season. Celtic have had too many hiccups this season, but I think given what's happened over the last 7 days, I think Celtic are now firmly in the box seat.
I think a lot of Celtic fans thought they've got the measure of Rangers. That's maybe a wild claim, but they've won 2 games.
I don't think it's wild, because when have Rangers taken care of Celtic? When have they beat them when it really mattered? That's a bit. I can't see Rangers going to Celtic Park and winning.
But the worry would be the other games. And at half time, Laurie, were you a wee bit worried at St Mirren? The game against St Mirren still
not
no?
The slightest, Paul, to be honest with you. I was in attendance, but a season ticket holder, of course. I'll revert back to my comments regarding Philippe Clement. It cast aspersions on Dermot Gallagher, a Sky referee, analyst. He also, in the game where they drew 3 each for Celtic, there was almost a collector's huge sigh of relief with him and his fans in celebrating a draw against Celtic, as if they'd go out of jail, and proclaiming it as a moral victory. I think the guy's losing a plot. I'm so delighted that we've got Brendan at the helm. Regarding the St Mirren game that you've alluded to, no, I just knew it was going to be a patient exercise. We broke down a stubborn defence, and we prevailed in the second half. So, whilst there's everything still to play for, it's now advantage Celtic. Rangers will not beat Celtic at Celtic Park. We need only draw against Rangers and won the other 4 games. However, I also remember only too well, as I've referenced before, Paul, Helicopter Sunday. So I take nothing for granted. I just think that I'm very pleased that our manager, Brendan, is at the helm.
Neil, what would you say?
I'm more pleased about him being at the helm than the big guy Clement. I think that he's becoming emotional.
Well, let's put this to Neil McCann. You've said that a couple of times. All right. Has he lost the plot? The moral victory?
No, absolutely not. I think pressure at that level, having played there, understand it from a playing perspective, but as a manager, I can only imagine how intense that must be. I certainly have seen Brendan Rodgers show certain levels of that, considering that he's been over the course, so successful as a Celtic manager. I don't think everyone would have shared Laurie's confidence through the season, particularly when the results started to seep away that allowed Rangers back into the title race. It's great that Laurie is one of those guys that do stand behind the manager and the fans, all the players all the time. But I think pressure does strange things at different times. Particularly football's a high pressure job. You can escape when you clock in and clock out a training as a manager, as a player. The emotional attachment, the emotional pressure doesn't leave you. I can tell you that either I've been as a manager and as a coach, and particularly as a player when you're in at the cutting edge of a season. I don't think Philippe Clement has lost any. I think he's been pretty consistent. Yeah, I take some of the comments. Guys can look into that and trying to read a wee bit from him. I think what he's always done is try to look at one game at a time. But without question, you have got an eye on what's the big challenge ahead, which is winning the title for Rangers. Without question, they still have the opportunity to go for a treble. It is only 1 point if they beat Dundee. And you're right, I don't think anybody would say that Rangers so far in recent times against Celtic have done enough to give them the overriding feeling that they're going to go to Celtic Park and be able to beat Celtic. But having been in a situation before where you have to go and win your games, it's so important, whether it be against Dunfermline last game of the season and Celtic or Kilmarnock away. It's not about winning the game, it's about how many goals you score. You talk about Helicopter Sunday. Those games always throw up pressure, and it's how you deal with the pressure. Andy spoke about it, you spoke about it there, Paul. I think looking at the games, and there's been several games that I've watched Celtic, they've been really, really poor in terms of what they're capable of, but they've ground out results. Some games they haven't ground out a result, haven't been able to grind one out, and then that's allowed Rangers to close that gap. Looking at the game on Saturday, if you were a really confident man, Laurie, at half time, you need to get yourself down and do some punditry work, because I looked at that and I actually thought St Mirren were excellent. They played some really good football. Celtic didn't have a shot on target in the first half, I think, if I'm right in saying. And until Hatate scores that exceptional goal, that's when you could see the pressure totally relieve. And I think pressure, I don't know if you feel it in the stands, Laurie, but you can certainly have an effect on a team, a support. And you can see guys tightening up, but not everybody
probably did early in the season for Celtic.
Not everybody deals with that well.
I don't think he's lost the plot at all.
No,
Philippe Clement. I think he's been a bit of a class act. I was surprised that he marched up the tunnel after the game, because obviously it was a shock at losing. But every manager has felt a painful defeat, and you stay and you shake the hands of the opposing manager, because I think everyone knows what type of pressure a manager is under. Management can be brutal, and you can be binned for absolutely no reason. Sure. So that was the only surprise to me, and I think that it just tells you that the pressure now every week is just enormous.